I have a tendency to do things that my friends, even the nerdiest of my friends, think is really, really stupid. I pick things that are artificial, things that are restrictive in nature, and I commit myself to them computing wise. Like, I'll only use the terminal or the command line for a month, or I'll only use an operating system that 12 other human beings currently use. I do this to myself. You might say, oh, that's very sadomasochistic. What are you up to there, Brian? I'm like, well, honestly, I just like using funky technology, and I really like using older technology that's, let's say past its prime a little bit. My current fixation, if you will, is this Treo 650, this Palm OS Treo 650. It's got a 300 megahertz processor in it, little tiny square screen. This was made back when phones fit in your hand. Like, you could actually, let's see, where am I at here? You could actually, I'll put this over here. You can actually hold it in your palm. It's so small. I mean, it is a Palm OS device. And it's fantastic. It's got a little thumb keyboard and whatnot, and it's got like 32 megs of RAM, I want to say, on here. So, blazing in an age when we're like, is 2 gigs of RAM enough for my Android device? No, this thing's got like 32 megs. It's ridiculous. But I saw this, and it made me remember how much I wanted one of these back almost 15 years ago. This was back before Android. This was back before iPhones. The iPhone had not come out yet when this Treo 650 debuted. This was a pretty special beast. It was running a version of Palm OS, and it was on a data network, so you could check your email on the go, much like a BlackBerry device, but it was running Palm OS. How cool is that? And of course, the network it was on was just some little 2G, whatchamacallits. It wasn't anything all that fancy, but it was cool. And so I saw a pack of these on eBay, unopened. Seriously, the boxes were still shrink wrapped from back in 2004, 2005, and what have you. And I picked one up for like $30. I got one. And I've had one for a little while now. I videotaped an unboxing, and I'm going to go through a full unboxing with you guys and detailing exactly what can be done with this in a separate video. But today I wanted to talk about the fact that I've got this little cell phone here. This little Palm OS powered cell phone. It's a single tasking operating system, which means, whether we like single tasking or not, it's very, very secure. By today's standards, you're just not likely to get hacked running a Palm OS 5 little cell phone. It's just probably not going to happen. The battery life is insanely good. I have been running this charge. No, this is not a joke here. I'll turn this little screen on here so I can show you here. I'll turn the screen on and see if the video shows up here. It is, let's see, 38, come on, focus, 38% battery life. 38% battery life, and it's been running for about a week. And not idle either. I've been playing games on this. I've been playing like the original Sim City and stuff on this. It's been amazing. And the more I've fiddled with this, the more I become highly interested in actually using this as my cell phone. So I got cell phone service for it. Now, this is a Sprint model. These don't have, SIM cards in it. It's an old CDMA phone and they didn't use SIM cards in some of these. So I went down to the Sprint store and we figured out, after much trial and error, how to get an old Palm OS phone activated on the Sprint network. This was an astoundingly difficult feat. It was really hard to get it up and running on Sprint. It was the people down at the store that I went to. First of all, not one of them knew what a Palm OS device was. None of them had ever heard of a Palm Pilot. And there was like 6 people working there, technicians. They, in fact, they're like, okay, well, go to your settings, and this is Palm OS, and this is back again, pre-Android, the number of settings on here is like, there's like four settings. There's very little you can actually change and alter on this phone. There's not a lot of things going on in the background here. And they're like, I'm like, well, here you go. And so I showed them the screen with the phone settings, right? So you could set up your phone using your IMEI and all that sort of thing. And the guy goes up to the phone, hold it in hand, and starts to try to swipe down from the top with his finger. And he couldn't do it. He kept doing it over and over again. And eventually, like, the screen registered it as one of them as a tap, and it just selected a menu. And it just blew his little mind away. It basically just, if you can see this here, but it selects this little pop-up menu. It's like, oh, do you want to delete an application or beam an application to another Palm OS device using the infrared port? Yeah, this is back when technology was that cool. And he couldn't figure out what to do. He's like, he handed it to me and he's like, here, can you pull the settings menu down? And I'm like, no, dude, not Android. That's not Palm OS. And so I'm like, so I asked him a question. Is there a way to look up if you still support this device on your network? Because, I mean, it's been 15 years since it came out, discontinued, according to this Wikipedia page, in 2008. So 11 years-ish since it's been discontinued. I mean, maybe it's not supported on the network anymore. We eventually determined that they have in fact been setting people up on these devices, using as Sprint as the network, including with data. So once we got this figured out, which did not happen quickly, we got on a phone with a lot of people at Sprint mothership, and oh my heavens, it took a while. So once we eventually got that figured out, we decided to set it up. I opted to go with one of their little monthly plans, because I'm not going to set up like a year-long plan on one of these little phones. I don't even know if it's going to work or not, right? So we set up on a little, whatever their cheapest monthly plan is. I'm like, let's just see if this works, because if this works, that's neat. So we set it up, and after a little while, we get it working. Making a phone call works. Sending text messages works, but no data. No data was working. And what we eventually figured out was, back then, these are basically like 2G phone speeds, right? I mean, this is not speedy data service. Back then, you used access points as settings, and you had to have oftentimes a login and password to get into those access points. Not exactly but has some similarities to how modems work, right? It's just a little bit different than modern data networks. And so they couldn't figure out how to set that up. They went through their systems up and down, top to bottom. To Sprint's credit, they really looked. I mean, they really tried to figure this out. According to them, the phone is still supported. You should be able to get data service and everything on this phone, but it requires access to an application and database in Sprint's internal network that nobody remembers existed, let alone does anyone know where it's at or how to use it. So then we started playing around with the automatic registration feature. So you actually get their what do they call it? Now I can't even remember the word for it. I'm gonna find this really quickly here. Provisioning, that's what it is. I was looking for the right word. They're provisioning servers, and their provisioning servers in theory would be able to do this all automatically. It would be able to go out, fetch what the username and password based on the IMEI and whatnot, and all the CDMA numbers. I don't even remember if it has IMEI, but it has a number that's like that, and the phone number, and fetch it all and pre-program the phone. That's how it's supposed to work, right? The provisioning servers for these phones, for these older devices, are still operational, but non-functional. The servers can be hit and pinged against, but they don't seem to be working. And no one at Sprint that I was able to talk to, and I talked to a lot of people, could figure out where that server might be, like physically. No one knows. There's a provisioning server at Sprint that deals with these older phones that just exist somewhere. I don't know if it's virtualized. I don't know if it's a real piece of hardware on a rack somewhere. I don't know if it's a little Dell tower sitting under someone's desk. But there is a provisioning server at Sprint that they cannot find, is what I've been told. The phone should be supported, even for data, but we can't get data working, which is a bummer, which is a real bummer. I think this would be rad. The speed would not be tremendously good, but for things like email and IRC, and I do like BBSing on the go a lot. I could use Telnet clients to BBS from this, and that'd be plenty fast. I mean, plenty fast for that sort of thing. Plus, it's just such a great little device. And with the battery life that runs circles around. I mean, it's not an exaggeration to say it is 10, 20, maybe even 30 times better battery life than any Android device we have in this house, which is a couple of them at this point. You know, my wife's got her Android phone and an Android tablet and whatnot. But the battery life is insane on this sucker. It's so crazy. The screen is cute. It's fun to hold. This little keyboard is fun to touch. I mean, it's not easy to type on. It's not a big, nice touch typing experience. I mean, it's my thumbs. You put my two thumbs side by side here, and it covers up the bulk of the keys. But after a little playing around with it, I actually kind of got the hang of it. I wouldn't write a novel on here. I don't even know if I'd write a very long email on here, but for, I don't know, playing some BBS games, sending a couple of quick notes around, looking a few things up, this would be amazing. I would really dig this. I've been looking around trying to find whatever phone it is that will tide me over until the real crop of Linux powered phones arrive, you know, like the Librem 5 from Purism, who's a sponsor of this show, but also making an awesome phone, so it warrants being mentioned. And being as that's not out yet, and I'm here with an Android phone that I used to run Copperhead on. Copperhead's a variant on Android that has kind of removed all the googly stuff and just hardened it up a whole heck of a lot, which is glorious. But Copperhead is no longer being maintained for quite some time now. So I had to move back to regular stock Android recently, and I'm not a fan of having that on me all the time. I know most of you are probably like, you know what? We know there's privacy concerns. Get over it, Lunduke, and just deal with having an Android phone. But I don't really need it all anyway. What I need is some very basic communication stuff. Everything that this little Palm Treo does really well, assuming I could get data service. So here I am. I'm with this little guy. And before you ask, I can't just use it as a little hotspot device where I just go from hotspot to hotspot. No Wi-Fi. Yeah, this was back before devices like this tended to have Wi-Fi. I mean, some did, a few did, but most did not. In fact, most like Palm devices around this time, the way they usually got Wi-Fi support was by putting in an SD card. Whoop, that just popped out at the top. Putting in an SD card, which this one does support, that gave it Wi-Fi capabilities, and then little Wi-Fi driver application that you put into it. And that is a possibility. I could put a Wi-Fi little SD card into here, and that would work. That should do the job by providing some sort of wireless network access when I go around. But it wouldn't work like on the bus or the train or walking around town or whatnot, and that's mostly when I'd want this anyway. So I think I'm going to have to put this guy off to the side for now. I have had a lot of fun playing with it, but it's kind of a bummer that here we are in 2019. Technology is rad, right? Computers are rad. And by computers, I mean all of it. The portable devices, everything. We've got some really cool stuff now, but we had some really cool stuff 10, 15, 20 years ago and more too. Stuff that still is fun. I mean, this little Treo, the original SimCity 1, SimCity Classic on here is so much fun to play, and it does not eat the battery alive, which is awesome. I mean, you could play it. I've played it for I don't know how many hours. I've been going around. I commute everywhere around town. I take the commuter rails and whatnot around town. And whenever I'm sitting on the train, I'm sitting here playing with SimCity. I got my little stylus out. I got a little stylus because this isn't a capacitive screen. It's a little reflective screen. And you touch it, and boom, with the stylus, and you got the SimCity, and it's amazing. And you're dancing, and it's wonderful. You're not really dancing, but it is pretty cool. But I have to put it off to the side. I got to put it down because the major carrier networks are dropping old technology. And some of it is because they need to move on to new technology, and the old wavelengths need to be used for something else, blah, 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 blah. But what most of it seems to be, at least in the case with Sprint here, is that they've just kind of lost that knowledge that we all had, or that their employees had, that kept this sort of stuff running. They still want to be able to support it. They still want to be able to sell me, a monthly service. If they can support it, great. But they can't figure out how. Their turnover rate is such that all the people that used to work on this don't seem to be working at Sprint anymore. And they don't seem to have it documented, and if they do, it's not anywhere where anyone remembers knowing how to find it. And that's really sad when you think about technology that not only is it not that old, but it's still useful, right? Even if a phone or a TV or what have you, or a computer is 30 years old, even if it came out in 1776, if it's useful, why not keep using it? Someone's going to find a use for it if it's really useful. I would use this, especially for the $30 I paid for it. Oh my heavens. I mean, my thought with this, $30, if it tides me over for 1 month, great. That was a pretty cheap phone, even for a month. But I can't get data, and it just bums me out. And it bums me out that so many devices like this go from being not only viable, but I can't, it's not going to do any of the stuff I need to do because we've lost that knowledge. It's rough. It's rough when you see that knowledge be lost. I kind of take it in my soul a little bit when I see people forgetting how to use these older networks, older computers, older operating systems, older communication protocols. The fact that I go around and talk about things like Gopher, and people don't, for the most part, know what that is. People don't know. They don't know the beauty that was Gopher. Oh my Lord, it was heavenly. Even though Gopher's all open nowadays, there's open source Gopher servers. I should put up a Gopher version of Lunduke.com. A viewer was actually writing me in about that the other day, and oh man, it is a good idea. I should look into that. Anyway, so this is a Treo 650. I'll post the unboxing and a little me trying to use it review maybe sometime next week. I have to actually edit it. I have 2 clips. I got to edit them together. Editing 2 clips together, it's like, whew, that's hard work, man. I don't know. I'll get to it soon. But yeah, man, this would be viable if only people could remember how to support the technology that was big just 10 to 15 years ago. I don't know what that says about us as a culture, but we're losing that collective knowledge way too quickly. People are just not remembering. People are just not knowing. It's a bummer. Anyway, this isn't meant to be a super bummer. Honestly, I had a cool gadget. I didn't pay very much money for it. And even though it can't get online, it's still a really cool Palm OS PDA with a nice color screen and a massive 300 megahertz X scale processor. Seriously, the specs on this thing are just like nowadays you'd be like, so a 2.7 inch 320 by 320 screen, but it's 16-bit. No 256 colors here. A 0.3 megapixel camera on the back right there. No camera on the front because that's a crazy idea. And also, if you want to take a picture of yourself right next to the camera, it's one of those little reflective domes so you can make sure you're like centered right next to the camera. It's just the best way of doing it. Yeah. Okay, 32 megabytes of memory. That's great. But an 1800 milliamp processor battery in here, which you can get newer phones with way bigger batteries, but nowhere near the battery life on this itty bitty little guy. It's glorious, man. I tell you, I want more good things like that in my life. A quick shout out to a sponsor of this show, Linode. If you go to linode.com/Lunduke and you sign up for one of their servers, if you don't know Linode is a hosting company. They host your servers, son. And as you can expect from a company called Linode, they do offer a whole heaping helping of Linux. And you sign up. If you sign up through that URL, linode.com/Lunduke, there's a link maybe somewhere, like on YouTube, there's a link under the video, places like that. You get an extra $20 credit for your hosting, which, that's doubly nice. And Linode's pretty cool. They support a lot of Linux conferences and Linux events, which you got to give them benefit, for that. You got to give them a high five there. I feel like people that support Linux, like all the sponsors of this show do, that just makes them extra cool. Again, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. The sponsors that are on the Lunduke show, the coolest sponsors there are. You're not going to find like credit card company sponsors here, nothing like that. Just Linux loving hardcore folks. That's how we do it. And of course, if you want the RSS feeds and everything, go over to lunduke.com. Everything over there is just there. Now, right about now, some of you are thinking to yourself, maybe Lunduke, just maybe, consider this. Editing is not always a bad thing. Sometimes you can take your shows that you're doing, and when things go a little off the rails, you can edit it down. I counter that by saying, I'll see you guys next show. See, I can edit that too, but I'm not gonna because I'm really, really lazy.